A day after the mass shooting in Minneapolis, a trans person was arrested in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, for murdering a father who called him out as he was spraying graffiti on a bridge. The man shot was returning from walking his 6-year-old to school, saw the suspect on the bridge, called out to him. That led to an interaction. The victim called 911. The dispatch officer was able to overhear the shooting. Later on, police arrested the suspect at his home, which was covered with slogans such as Free Palestine, BLM, Defund the Police, Stop Cop City. And the suspect was later identified by Andy Ngo as a male Indian national who purports to be a woman named Sasha Shakur. This brings us to my next guest. She is a White House correspondent for the Daily Wire and author of the book Detrans, True Stories of Escaping the Gender Ideology Cult. Please welcome to the program, Mary Margaret Oloham. Mary Margaret, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Larry. It's great to be here.
Your book could not be more timely for obvious reasons. What prompted you to write it?
Well, I have covered culture war issues since 2019. I've focused in on it. Now I'm the White House correspondent for the Daily Wire. But as we saw over the past 5 or 6 years, there was this uptick in all of these young people consuming pro-trans content online, a lot of pro-trans content in schools, therapists, gender doctors, etc. We're seeing this big push. And so I started seeing more and more people talking about how it was good for kids to undergo so-called gender-affirming hormones or surgeries. So I started thinking, okay, there's got to be kids who are doing this and who are very obviously regretting this because, of course, you're ultimately going to regret this. And so I started looking for them, and sure enough, they were quietly starting to speak up, trying to tell people, trying to warn people, and I thought, we should be highlighting their stories and helping people understand the reality of what these transitions are, because unlike what the transgender community would tell you, it's not a safe, happy little exercise. It's morbid, it's sad, it's really brutal, both physically and mentally. It can be disgusting depending on what kind of surgeries you're trying to get into. And so, speaking with these detransitioners, my goal was to show people, you can defend this, but here's the reality of what we're talking about.
How does one detransgender?
Well, you can't actually change your gender. So what you ultimately do when you detransition is you stop taking the hormones, you stop living as, let's say you're a guy who thinks he's a girl. You stop living as a girl. You stop acting like you're a girl. You stop wearing girl clothes, and you try to go back to living a healthy lifestyle. And maybe that doesn't mean that you fully are kind of out of the spell of the trans community, but you're slowly picking up the pieces of your old life and realizing, okay, I was lied to on so many different levels. So for the detransitioners that I talked to, and a lot of these were women, they told me they stopped taking testosterone, and half their issues cleared up so quickly because, they were injecting this hormone into their body that was causing them to have serious rage issues, serious emotional issues, lots of physical pain, whether it was their changes in their muscles or changes in their hair and their skin, texture, hair falling out, all these crazy things that you would never expect to happen. And so when they detransitioned, they really stopped putting themselves in these situations. They distanced from the gender-affirming doctors and therapists, and they slowly came to this realization that they had been lied to and that they were much better off trying to figure out what their mental illness was caused by separate from the gender industry.
The book is called Detrans, True Stories of Escaping the Gender Ideology Cult. Mary Margaret, what is a transgender person? How do you define that?
Well, I don't use the word transgender person because, again, I don't think that you actually can be transgender. What I would say is, and in my writing, this is what we say, a trans-identifying person. So a person who identifies as trans or a person who identifies as transgender. And at the end of the day, they think that they have been told by the transgender community that they, because they think they are a man or because they think they're a woman, that they were born in the wrong body. And so they're going to try and align their gender identity with who they think they are and who they want to be. And obviously this is something that a mentally ill person does. A person who is not struggling with mental illness does not think that they were born in the wrong body. They understand that, the body they were born in is the body that they got, and if they're struggling with gender dysphoria, they might need to seek help in other areas. But at the end of the day, no surgery, no hormones, no therapy is going to actually change you from a man to a woman or a woman to a man. And so that's one of the big lies of this industry, is all these happy little platitudes to suggest that you can actually do this. And a lot of these young people who, especially young people nowadays, who are being duped by this and are starting to undergo transitions or attempt to transition, they will often believe, not just, a little bit, but believe part and parcel what they're being told. And the main big lie that they're sold is, you will be happy if you undergo these treatments, because a lot of them are, it's so tragic, Larry. They're undergoing a lot of mental illness. They're really sad. They have really sad personal lives, or maybe they have hard family lives, and so they're seeking happiness, which is a human condition. Everyone is, but unfortunately it's being harnessed against them in an ideological way. And when they go back to their doctors and say, wait, you removed my healthy breasts forever and told me it was going to make me feel better, but now I realize that doesn't make me feel better and I want them back, the doctors are just kind of like, sorry, like you regret it now, but we don't have anything else to do with you because we're only here to help those trying to transition. So it's truly evil. It's so manipulative. The Trump administration's FTC is starting to look into it. I think I'm hearing whispers that they might actually begin to prosecute some of these doctors and some of these big medical organizations that are pushing these lies on people, and it can't come too soon.
What percentage of the population is, to use your term, trans-identifying?
Well, that's a great question. We're often sold different numbers from the left, from these gender activists and these doctors who prefer to have certain statistics, especially when it comes to detransitioners. We don't know how many there are because the doctors and therapists don't accurately record the number of detransitioning people, and they often don't help them, and the detransitioners often don't actually go to the doctors and tell them that they're detransitioning. These pro-transgender institutes would tell you that there's about 2.3 million trans adults and around, I think, 700,000 trans youth in the United States. I, for one, as someone that writes about this a lot, I don't trust those numbers. I wouldn't really feel comfortable citing them in my work, but those are the numbers that are out there right now. And I think you have to remember, too, when you're talking about trans-identifying youth, that we're talking about kids who are 13, right, 14, 15, 16, 17. So these are kids that are seeing online, they're hearing this type of rhetoric. Right. They're projecting this identity for themselves.
My guest is Mary Margaret Oloham. The book is called Detrans, True Stories of Escaping the Gender Ideology Cult. Mary Margaret, don't go away. When I come back, I want to ask you, is there been some reassessment by parts of the medical community about the gender-affirming treatments? I'm Larry Elder. 888-971 SAGE 888-971-7243. My guest is Mary Margaret Oloham, author of Detrans, True Stories of Escaping the Gender Ideology Cult. Mary Margaret, why does it seem like a disproportionately large amount of school shootings are done by trans-identifying people?
Well, that's a great question. I actually just filed a story on this that's going to publish soon at dailywire.com. We took a look at how many of these recent shootings are tied to transgenderism, and also the fact that some of these shooters are inspired by other shooters who acted out of a desire to target Christians, and specifically were trans-identifying shooters. This is a really disturbing trend. It's one that I actually asked the White House about, and Sebastian Gorka told me that his plan on counterterrorism that he's been drafting for the president, a counterterrorism plan, is going to specifically address this transgender violence epidemic. And I think one possible answer as to why we're seeing so much transgender violence is that these hormones that a lot of these young people are taking, and to be clear, these shooters that we're seeing are in their early 20s largely. These hormones that they're taking cause very serious emotional swings. They cause depression, they cause suicidality, they cause rage. These are, it's absolutely incumbent upon authorities to let us know whether these shooters had these hormones in their system when these acts took place. But I think also it's important to note that these young people who are members of the transgender community, they're encouraged by these activists to view Christians, to view Catholics, to view people of faith as the enemy. They're encouraged to view their parents as the enemy. Anyone who dissents from your gender identity or your gender orthodoxy, the transgender community will tell you they hate you and they want you dead. So, for example, if your mother says, hey, you're not actually a boy, you're my daughter, and I'm not going to affirm you, the transgender community tells you your mother hates you and she wants you dead. And it's a very evil thing they do, where they want members of the transgender community to view the outside world as dangerous. And in these situations, it works, because when you take a mentally ill young person who is already struggling and is having a lot of mental health issues, you pump them full of testosterone and you tell them that everyone else in the world hates them. It is not surprising to me that some of these young people might take a look around and say, I'm really struggling. I'm going to target some of the most vulnerable people I can find. And it's a very scary, scary thing, but we've seen it happen repeatedly now, and it does seem that authorities are going to begin taking into account whether a young person who's experiencing gender dysphoria and believes that they're transgender, if that person has a criminal record, if they're showing signs of erratic behavior, showing signs that someone should be paying attention to them, then they should be investigated. Much like I think some of these terrorism authorities would say, the way authorities would pay attention to the erratic behavior of a young man who has ties to terrorist groups that have connections to Islam, for example, or if they're interested in waging a jihad, things like that. These are just warning signs that authorities should be taking into account, and it would be very naive at this stage in the game to pretend that we don't have an epidemic here of young people who identify as transgender committing violence against Christians.
Mary Margaret, let's talk about warning signs. If your daughter comes to you, you're a parent, and tells you that she feels like a boy, or your son comes to you and tells you that he feels like a girl, what should a parent do?
Well, the number one thing is to remain calm. A lot of parents freak out and have no idea what to do. And parents nowadays, this is a dilemma that I think it is so incredibly unfair to modern parents that they have to deal with this. But since they do, they need to be calm, and they cannot be lazy about how they respond to this, because what many American parents do is very tragic. They think, okay, I don't know anything about this. This is way over my head. And they take their daughter to the doctor and they say, please, doctor, help us. She thinks she's a boy.
30 seconds, Mary Margaret. Go ahead.
And the doctor will tell them, your daughter is a boy. You got to affirm her. Would you rather have a dead daughter or a living son? Mm-hmm. So it's up to those parents to do their work, to educate themselves, to remove phones, get your kids out of the schools that are putting them in this place, and just be real and confident and prayerful, and everything will be okay.
Just a few seconds left. Is the medical community beginning to reassess their attitude towards this issue?
Absolutely. And I think that's partially because they're facing a lot of lawsuits, and the Trump administration is making it clear that they can no longer get away with it.
The book is called Detrans, True Stories of Escaping the Gender Ideology Cult. Author is Mary Margaret Oloham. Mary Margaret, thank you very much for coming on. Very, very informative. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
You got it.